That sort of says NWB if you can't see it. But it didn't really work that well because it's hard to write things in clear liquid. In before NWB burns down house.
What's going on, guys? Nick Wright. Go ahead and like the video pretty please, because you're going to like the video for real. So in this video, I'm going to break down all of the workout equipment from squat shoes to wrist wraps to knee sleeves and go over what they do and when you should get them, when you shouldn't get them, what you should use, etc. First off, I want to make my personal opinion very clear. I am a firm advocate in raw lifting. And when I say raw, I'm not going by powerlifting standards, competitive powerlifting standards of raw. I'm talking about legitimately literal, raw, naked lifting for as long as you possibly can. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for safety and optimizing your lifting career. Longevity is key, and obviously anything that can help to optimize your lift is always good. So when you eventually need any sort of lifting equipment, by all means, it's a good thing to get it, and it can be very beneficial. But for any beginner lifter, I believe you should go without squat shoes, without wrist wraps, without a belt, without knee sleeves, without anything at all for as long as you possibly can, so long as it remains comfortable for you. Now, I want to make it clear also that if you are somebody who has a problem area, a bad elbow, bad wrist, something that requires you to have a wrap or a brace of some sort, I'm not talking to you. By all means, if you have a problem area, that's a necessity for you. I had tendonitis back in the past. I needed an elbow brace for it, at least during a period of time I did. So if you have a problem area, then I'm not talking to you. But for the lifter that has no problem areas, you're just lifting, I believe it is ideal to build up your strength without using anything at all for as long as you possibly can. What this is going to do is adapt your joints, adapt your muscles, and adapt your body overall to the heavy weight. In my personal opinion, when you jump right into weightlifting and you start using a belt your first time ever deadlifting, you start using wrist straps your first time ever bench pressing, you're never going to strengthen up your wrists. You're never going to strengthen up your core. If you throw on knee sleeves right away when you're only squatting 225 for a max, you're never going to give your knees a chance to actually strengthen up and adapt to that kind of weight. In my personal opinion, wearing wrist straps, wearing a belt, wearing equipment right away from the get-go is simply going to enable you. And it's going to make those areas that you're covering up and wrapping up weaker, essentially. So, God forbid you ever forget your wrist straps one day, you're going to have a bad time trying to bench with weak wrists because your wrists have always been supported by wrist straps since day one. Even with wrist straps on, if your wrists just never get a chance to strengthen up, you still might snap them up or make them incredibly sore one day once your bench press gets heavy enough, even with wrist straps on. So I've always been a firm advocate and lift as raw, naked, and natural as you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. That said, I'm going to go over all the equipment, when I got it, and why I got it, and what I definitely recommend. So, okay, first and foremost, the first thing that any lifter should get right off the bat is a weightlifting belt. Now, all the tough guys on the internet are going to start screaming about how only pussies wear belts and whatnot. Yes, core training without a belt is important, and again, any lifter who's beginning should go as long as they possibly can without a belt. The reason I have Ariana deadlifting 185 for easy sets, being a 100-pound girl without a belt, is because I had her begin training without one and have never had her put one on since. So she's doing 185 for sets. She could probably do 200 for a PR right now. We want to get her to 225 before the Olympia in Vegas. She's going to do that all beltless. Why? Because she's practiced deadlifts without a belt, she's strengthened up her core, and now she's able to optimally deadlift, perform the movement, without losing core tightness and form. So sharpen your core up first, but there's going to be a certain point, like mid-200s, or even sooner than that, it might be for 225, in which I'm going to have her wear a belt simply because it's a lot of weight. And at that point, when you begin struggling and grinding the weight out, if your form should slip, it's no longer going to be just a, oh, that form was ugly. It's going to be a snap, crackle, pop. I can't lift for 6 weeks because I just snap my shit up. So wearing a belt when it's appropriate is very important. How it actually works, when you breathe in, weightlifting, you don't want to breathe into your chest. Like normally, you want to breathe into your belly. Into your belly. That's why when I deadlift, I get the gut popping over the belt. Everyone's like, oh, you got a gut. It's not a gut. I'm breathing into my belly. You want to get that gut going on. And that's going to act as compression, and it's going to keep your upper body nice and tight so you can squat and deadlift without your body bending over, your spine snapping over. So a belt essentially allows you to breathe your stomach into the belt, and it tightens the belt around you. And if you picture a wiggly worm that can bend either which way, and you suddenly put a solid brace around that worm, the worm can't wiggle anymore. So it's essentially like a brace for your core so you can stay nice and tight and not lose form, not break your form when you're doing the heavier lifts. Ultimately allows you to breathe into it better. Better breath equals better power, and it's efficient. Go ahead, if you're a serious strength trainer, go ahead, skip the little poverty belts, go right to an insert belt. Okay, they're expensive, but they last forever. You break it, you can send it right back in, they'll fix it for free. Solid, 10 millimeter or 13 millimeter. It's a solid ass belt. Makes a big difference. I use the little cheap poverty belts for years and years and years. Insert, night and day difference. Next up on the list, squat shoes. Now, forever and ever and ever I was against squat shoes. In fact, Simon Ontario from Aesthetics gives me a hard time all the time because he claims I was being hypocritical. I used to post up statuses lightly bashing squat shoes. I would also admit in these statuses, mind you, that I'm sure I'd be buying them down the line anyway. I admitted that way back in the day. But I always laughed at them because I'd see lifters who didn't need them buying them. And I'd be like, well, what are you doing? Like, you're going to build all your squat strength up with the elevation of squat shoes. You won't even be able to squat that way without them. Like, you're going to be relying on the squat shoe elevation. Now, I'm going to admit I was a little bit ignorant in saying that because I was basing it off of me and my body dynamics. Now, I have very, very, very good flexibility. I'm very mobile. Or I was very mobile, I should say. I never needed squat shoes to squat ever. I didn't realize at the time that not everybody was like that. Finally, when I snapped my ankle up, I damaged my ligaments in my ankle, I lost a lot of mobility. I had to go and buy these. And they made a difference. They fixed my squat. And now I love them. And I learned after that from training other people, going over other people's squat forms, that a lot of people simply don't have the mobility to squat without some sort of elevation under the heel. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I say get your squat down with bare feet, a flat shoe, first, if you can. But if you cannot get low, even after practicing mobility and whatnot, you cannot get low comfortably while keeping a nice squat form, you need to get some squat shoes. They're going to elevate your heel up, they're going to put your center of gravity a little bit more behind you so you can stay more upright, and they're going to allow you to squat deeper without killing your joints or lifting your heel off the ground. Squat shoes are amazing. If you're a serious powerlifter going for serious strength, there's two brands you can get. There's either Nike Remelios 2, which is what I have, Johnny Candido has them, or there's the Adidas AdiPowers, which are also very popular. They're both the same exact thing. I've tried both of them on. Nike Remelios 2 are slightly more comfortable if you have wider feet. That's about it. It all comes down to personal preference, really. They're both about $200 each, so they're expensive, but well worth it. Next up, we have knee safety. Knee sleeves. Now, knee sleeves are not the same thing as knee wraps. Okay, knee wraps are not allowed in raw competitions as a powerlifter. Why? Because you can wrap a knee wrap so tight around the knee, it'll actually add up to 50 pounds to your squat if it's a good solid knee wrap brand. Whereas knee sleeves will not actually add anything to your squat. They simply compress your knees, keeping them safe. They may add a slight little spring at the very bottom of the squat, but put it this way, if you cannot squat the weight without the knee sleeves are not going to allow you to suddenly squat the weight. Unlike knee wraps, which will allow you to squat weight you cannot squat normally. The reason I got these is because right around when my squat finally hit 400 pounds, aka I did not use any knee support at all to strengthen my knees up until I squatted 400 pounds, I kind of felt some discomfort in my knees after a heavy ass workout. Nothing serious, I just kind of feel, oh, my knees took a little bit of a beating there. So I decided to get these bad boys. They compress my knees, and in doing so, they also help keep your knee in line, in a nice smooth path of movement, rather than wobbling around because of the compression. And in doing so, it now allows me to squat heavy weight, nice and deep, and takes away a lot of the risk of wear and tear on my knees. So again, don't wait until it hurts. Sometimes it's good to nip it in the bud to prevent it from hurting. It's all about longevity. But again, don't jump the shark. Don't get it until you feel like you need it. Almost lastly, we have wrist support, wrist straps. Now, I have the Gangsta Wraps from Mark Bell, howmuchabench.net, and I did buy these with my own money, $40. Mark Bell did not send me these for free. And believe me when I tell you, I love Mark Bell's stuff. All of his slingshot gear, his howmuchabench.net gear, it is literally, if you're into automotives or tools, it's the snap-on of weightlifting equipment. It is the cream of the crop. It is the Rockford Fosgate of weightlifting equipment. So I love these wrist straps. They're gangster wraps. They're diesel. But if you guys notice, I benched mid 300s. I'm going to go for a 365 bench in a couple of weeks. I still don't use wrist straps on a bench. Why? Because I don't need them. My wrists feel no discomfort. I feel nice and strong in the wrist when I'm benching. I don't need them. So I'm not going to use them so I can maintain strong wrists. If it at any point begins to feel discomfort or pressure on my wrists when benching, I'll put them on for bench. Not a big deal. But I don't need them right now. You will notice that I use them for overhead pressing now. Ever since you saw me max out last week, 205 on the overhead press, and I decided that I was going to work to really bring up my overhead press, I wear wrist straps now. Why? Because unlike the bench press, your wrists are in an even more strenuous position upon overhead pressing. So again, it doesn't hurt my wrist, but we're going to nip it in the bud and prevent any possibility for discomfort or injury just by wearing wrist straps every time I overhead press now. Wrist straps. Definitely not the most important thing in the world, but man, these can come in handy beautifully. If you're strength training, I recommend deadlifting with raw grip. But a lot of powerlifters will use wrist straps to train the actual strength aspect of their deadlift when giving their grip a break. I know George Lehman trains deadlifts with wrist straps, and then he'll go and train his grip separately. And that's absolutely fine as well. Some lifters will tear up their hands deadlifting, and they'll need to give their hands a break, so they'll use wrist straps for a week or two to help them grip the actual deadlift so they can continue training deadlifts without chopping up their hands more, let their hands heal. And these are most important when it comes to certain rowing movements. I have a video on this. Look up Nick Wright, when to use wrist straps. Rowing movements are different than deadlift movements. So sometimes it's beneficial to use wrist straps to optimize your rowing and really target the back and not shortchange your back, which is a bigger muscle than your forearm, simply because your forearms are too weak to hold the weight. So I recommend getting them. They're cheap. Last but not least, weightlifting chalk. Everybody should have weightlifting chalk, hands down. I don't care if you're a beginner, advanced, intermediate, whatever. Get weightlifting chalk, you'll love it. That's it, guys. Subscribe now. Please like the video, share it, comment below what you guys use. If you have any differing opinions from what I said, go ahead and leave them in the comments below and I'll look at them. Perhaps we can chat about it.